you actually just had COVID, right?
Yeah, we were out in Washington State doing a tour of the great floodlands up there, and we may talk about that a little bit here in our interview tonight.
It's possible.
Yeah, and we had there was 30 attendees and 6 or 7 or 8 facilitators, so about say 36 to 38 people altogether. And on day 2, one of the attendees started feeling symptoms, and he went into town, got tested, came back and said, I tested positive, so he and his wife left. And the rest of us went on with our tour for the next, it was a 5-day tour. And at the end of 5 days, which is about the incubation period, several people started feeling some symptoms, and then we all parted company, went our separate ways, and then we're doing a kind of a telegram chat amongst all of the tour attendees. So it turned out about, I think, somewhere around 22 people came down with it, but nobody was too seriously affected. But here's what's interesting. The fellow that brought it into the group, patient 0, had been double vaxxed. The other thing is that over half the people that came down with it had also been double vaxxed. So that my own personal experience, along with a number of others' experiences and experiences of people that I know firsthand, suggests that maybe those vaccines aren't working like they were touted to be.
Yeah, it's there's tons of stories like that.
Oh yeah,
where people, you know, it's known that if you're vaccinated, you can spread it almost just as easily as if you're not vaccinated.
Yeah.
But they say, you know, there's been claims that, you know, I don't know. I don't have any personal experience with it. I don't think I've had COVID. But, you know, they say that it's supposed to relieve some of the symptoms when you are vaccinated. But obviously you can speak to that better than I could because you have firsthand experience.
Well, no, I don't have firsthand experience with being vaccinated.
Well, with getting COVID.
But yeah, so, you know, it was, my temperature topped out for 2 days at 100 degrees. Which isn't, you know, I was uncomfortable. I was achy for 4 days, 5 days. Didn't sleep well. But then I got the eye medicine that you're not supposed to.
The horse dewormer.
The horse dewormer. And you know what? As soon as I started taking that, I turned the corner. My wife, my son had it. There was no big deal with them. My brother started coming down with it about 4 or 5 days after I got home from the tour. By that time, I didn't get the horse dewormer until like 4 days after I got back home. So I'd had 4, maybe 5 days of incubation. So my brother started feeling the symptoms, but we already had the stuff, and he started doing the suggested dose. And literally the next day, he was feeling pretty normal, and by 2 days later, he felt perfectly fine, and it completely sidelined the whole phenomena of having the COVID.
What was the dose of ivermectin that you took?
12 milligrams.
12 milligrams, okay.
Yeah, so...
did you do anything else, like monoclonal antibodies or anything?
No, didn't do that, but, you know, did the megavitamins. I did the quercetin and vitamin D, vitamin C, zinc, all of the stuff that also mitigates the severity of the symptoms, you know. So when somebody says to me, well, the vaccines presumably mitigate the symptoms, maybe they do, maybe they don't. I don't know. We've been told a lot of things.
Right.
But, you know, there are studies that show that the quercetin, the zinc, you know, mega doses of C and D, things like that, also do that.
Right.
So, but yeah, you know, since I got over it, feeling great, feeling really good.
Awesome.
And I, you know, typically every year, right around Thanksgiving, I get something. It puts me down for 3, 4, 5 days. Just not like a mild flu or something, you know. I feel achy. I get headachy, you know, typical stuff, maybe some tender glands. And I started getting that a couple of weeks ago. And I thought, oh, gosh, I'm getting this again, my yearly bout with stuff. And then it just didn't happen. For 2 days, I felt like I was getting it, 3 days, and then I didn't. And I'm wondering if I can attribute that to my immune system being overactive now.
Right.
You know, in response to the to the COVID.
Right. You probably obviously have the antibodies now that you already had COVID. You
Yeah.
already tested positive.
Right.
So now that's, what is the term for that? When you get COVID, that's better than actually having the vaccine as far as protecting your body.
You now have the natural immunity.
Natural immunity.
And
that's what I was looking for.
That's typical when you have anything like that.
Right.
You get a natural immunity. Now, the coronaviruses overall, which are cold viruses, there's no cure. You just have to get it and get through it.
The scary thing about it is you can't have a fucking conversation about it on the internet.
That's the problem right there. You can't have a conversation, and it's like you've got stories. I mean, I've known now 5 people. 4 personally, one that my wife worked with, so I don't know him, but she knew him, worked with him for many years now, that have had severe reactions to the vaccines.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. We have a client. I was interviewing her in August about a potential project we might be doing next year. And we'd done a previous project for her 14 years ago. I know that because she was pregnant at the time, and we were expanding, giving her more room and creating a nursery and things like that. So now I'm back there. Her 14-year-old son then came out to say hello, and so she told me that, now this is August, and she had been vaxxed in April. She said she still could not sleep on her right side because the pain in her arm, and her 14-year-old son, who loved sports, was having trouble, with throwing balls and stuff because something, he was having trouble with his right arm. So I figured April to August, her right arm is still hurting. So, that was one. Another one, a good friend of my wife's took the first dose and got so sick she thought she was not even going to survive. And another one, the guy got sick with it. This is one that works with my wife, and he was away from work for a full month. When he came back, she talked to him, and he'd been in the hospital for a week with the COVID, but he had been double vaxxed. So there you go.
Yeah, it's such a polarizing topic to talk about.
It is.
And there's so much nuance to it. You know what I mean? Like, depending on who you are, how old you are, what your pre-existing medical conditions are, how different things affect you.
Yeah.
Like, I don't personally know anybody who's had a bad reaction to it, but I've talked to a lot of people who do know people who have had bad reactions to it. And I also know a lot of people who have had, including my wife, who's in her early 20s, who's had a really bad reaction to COVID when she got it. She wasn't vaccinated. So it's just, the problem is, trying to suppress certain sides of the narrative just gets crazy, especially when you're on a website like we're on, YouTube. And if you talk about this, YouTube will do everything they can to de-incentivize you to talk about anything that goes against vaccines.
Right.
It's almost like humanity needs something to distract us, something like a big asteroid.